Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Amy Rampley, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about some important information about having kids go back to school. So I am going to remove my mask so that you can see my face and I can talk a little bit better, but let me wash my hands really quickly. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to have some questions that we're going to go over, and then if you have questions, please don't hesitate to type them in and we will try to answer them to the best of our ability. First, I just want to say, take a deep breath. This is a very stressful time for everybody. I'm a parent too. I have two older boys, and this virtual learning situation and scenario has been pretty stressful since March. So we don't have all the answers, but hopefully we can help reduce some of your anxieties and some of your stresses about maybe having your kids go back to school.
So Dr. Rampley, when schools reopen and older children return, what precautions do you recommend families take to protect the health of a newborn?
Great question. So there's a couple different things you could do, and some of them you can actually be practicing now before your kids even go back to school. The first one is a lot of schools are going to probably implement wearing masks. And so it's really, really important that you start practicing having your child wear their mask now at home. And because, I always use the analogy of you can't put on a new pair of shoes or a new pair of high heels and expect to wear them all day. You're going to be very uncomfortable, swollen, and you're going to kick your shoes off. So masks tend to be very similar in that regard. People are feeling like they're suffocating, or they can't breathe, or it's hot and it's itchy and it bothers my nose. So have them start wearing masks at home. And this is where you can kind of get creative too. I always tell my families, hey, this is how you get to show your personality. Put some cool, emblems on it, or if you want to put stickers on it, or if you have specific material that your kid likes, bedazzle it, I don't care, just as long as it's something that they're comfortable wearing. For the little kids too, I would recommend having some sort of metal piece around the nose, because their noses are kind of tiny. And so they need to kind of be able to pinch it off so that it actually sits more properly on their face. And I think the most important thing about wearing the mask and practicing with that is that your kids are watching you. So having a positive approach to putting masks on your kids. Make it a game. Why don't you wear your mask at the same time? See how long you can wear your mask. Who can wear it the longest? We can earn prizes, that sort of thing. So yeah, mask wearing is very important. And obviously, washing your mask pretty frequently would be good. At least a couple times a week, and hot water would be good. The other thing is practicing at home, washing your hands. Okay, this is one of the most common things that we do all the time when it comes to avoiding illness, is we want to wash our hands properly. So having your kids learn how to wash their hands appropriately with soap and water and with sanitizer, because they're probably going to have both of those in the school environment. And again, teaching them the appropriate way. We talk about using our ABCs to sing when we're using soap and water, making sure we get the backs of the hands, we get inside the fingers. And I even tell my kids, get your fingernails. So you want to put your fingernails in the palms of your hand when you're washing. And so those are probably the two big things you can be doing at home right now. When your kids do go back to school, so they'll be wearing their masks, of course, most likely. Most schools are probably going to recommend that. The other thing is, practicing washing hands. They'll be helping the kids learn about social distancing. I think it's important. Kids are going to be missing each other, so they're going to want to be around each other, and they're probably going to want to hug each other and give each other high fives and fist pumps. So I tell my families, I think it's okay I give my kids elbows when they come in the room. We're not touching hands, we're not touching faces, that sort of thing. But the schools should help with the social distancing aspect. If you can pack your kids' lunch, obviously that's going to be helpful, and also can kind of help with more nutritious types of school lunch too. But then also when they come home, have them come in immediately. I usually say leave your shoes at in the garage or outside if you can, especially if they have a specific pair of shoes that they typically wear most of the time. And then when you come home, if you can change your clothes, great. Sometimes I'll even have parents, they feel more comfortable even having their kids actually take a shower and change their clothes and wash their clothes right away. That is okay. It's not necessary, but actually just changing your clothes would be important. And then kind of wiping down if there's any specific things that they have. Older kids, I would say wipe down your cell phone, wipe down your car keys, and then you kind of can move on from there.
How about for parents of newborns? What advice would we give them if they have older children going back to school?
I guess the thing is that just be reassured that a lot of times these little babies are not getting that sick from COVID. I'm not going to go into specific numbers for you because there's so many numbers I feel that is swirling around in everybody's heads about statistics. But most often it's very rare that babies are contracting it, not only from siblings, but also from their moms. So obviously if a mom is breastfeeding, that is a really great way to help protect their infant. If a mom can't breastfeed, that's okay. Just making sure that that baby's getting good nutrition. And then again, before the kiddos handle their new sibling, because of course they usually want to be all over that kid, giving them lots of hugs and kisses, making sure that they are washing their hands appropriately before they handle their new sibling. And then finally, obviously, if a kiddo goes to school or just even in general is not feeling well and an older sibling is feeling sick, then I would say trying to distance your child, your newborn, from the older sibling, which is actually not that difficult because most times newborns, they're just sleeping and eating and going to the bathroom anyway. So having maybe that baby stay more in the parent's bedroom or just kind of away from the child would be helpful.
So would you send your kids back to school right now?
That's a really, really great question. So when parents ask me this question, which I will tell you pretty much every family that I meet with every day is asking, what would you do? The first thing I tell them is if I could send my kids back, and again, I have teenagers, which I know are more high risk when you look at numbers of kids getting COVID-19 or just any illness in general, because they tend to be a little bit more risk takers. But I would recommend for my kids that I would want them to go back to school as long as the schools, again, were able to implement these safety measures and have them in place for my family. But the most important thing I always tell every family is that you need to do what you feel comfortable with. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. And again, I don't know everybody's situation. I'm not sure if there are specific families that have grandparents who are helping take care of the child, or maybe a grandparent is the caretaker of these kiddos and they are higher risk. So again, everybody's situation can be different. And so I always say you need to do what you feel comfortable with, but I am ready to send my kids back when it's safe.
Are you seeing any new issues related to COVID-19 and kids being at home more often or spending more time on screens?
Great question. So absolutely. The first thing I just always tell my families in general is that I think a pediatrician's job is to be a holistic physician or holistic pediatrician. And so that involves not just taking care of kids from a physical standpoint, like for wellness exams or for when they're not feeling well. Things that I also think are important are nutrition, mental health, social emotional health, educational health. Also, my job as a pediatrician is to represent all children. And, we have all children from all different backgrounds and races and religions and socioeconomic status as well. And so we need to make sure that we're taking care of all of these kids. But the biggest things I'm seeing is we are more sedentary. Okay, now even more so because most kids or most families that have kids who are virtual online now, and you are spending 6 to 8 hours a day with your child on a screen sitting there for school. Also, it's 110 degrees outside in Arizona right now, so that becomes very challenging for families to get their kids out to be active. Because it's hot, or they might not have access to a swimming pool, which is an easy, fix for a lot of us in the summertime. And so I would say I'm definitely seeing a more sedentary lifestyle, which then that does lead to, unfortunately, I am seeing patients come in with weight gain. I would say it's more often in my older kids because they have more access to screens, especially my kids with phones. And what I also see, which is interesting, is that they're going from school right automatically to being on their phone. Like I even have this discussion with my own teenagers at home. I'm like, look, when you're on break from your class, don't get on your phone. Do something else. So one of the things I've been recommending for our families and my patients that I see is you have breaks, I know, in your schedule every day. So put into your breaks, hey, maybe the first break you do 25 jumping jacks. Maybe the second break you run around your house a couple times. Maybe the third one you do some sit-ups or push-ups, or just even things for the younger kids, get the wiggles out because they're sitting for a really, really long time. So that's probably a big one I'm seeing. But also a lot of things I'm seeing is kids are coming in feeling socially isolated, which makes sense. I think, again, some families are really socially distancing and really like their only appointment has been to come to see the doctor, and they're like going crazy because they haven't been outside or seen anybody for months. And so the social isolation is pretty concerning. And then also I see that we have kids who are feeling more depressed and more anxious also about going back to school or just in general, because COVID information is everywhere. And so they hear you talking about it too, even if it's with adults. And so they're worried about COVID. And so those are probably the big things that I see. There are food insecurities that we worry about in certain groups of families. Also, I am concerned that, lots of times school is the place where kids go and they have a really nurturing environment. And if a parent or two parents or caregivers are trying to work and also trying to take care of their kids, it's stressful. So everybody's coming in a little more stressed.
So what would you recommend families do to stay healthy during this time?
Great question. So a couple of the things I've been really talking about is, I always talk about how do we take care of our body to make our bodies live longer and feel better. If you put good things in your body or you do good things for your body's going to take care of you. So there's a couple different pillars of things that I'm always talking about. The first one that I am a huge pusher of is nutrition. My background, actually, I'm a dietitian first, so I love food, and I know how important foods can be for your body. So probably one of the benefits I keep telling my families, if they can during COVID, is you can really work on helping your kids be less picky eaters and learn how to make good food choices for your body and why they're important. So lots of vegetables. In fact, I give my kiddos homework assignments. I'm like, you have to have a vegetable with lunch and you have to have a vegetable serving with dinner. And I always joke, it's not a vegetable, it's a serving of vegetables. And then I actually recommend at least 2 to 3 servings of fruit every day. Not fruit juice, because that's just a lot of sugar. We want actual whole fruits. And then I talk about we need, if you can drink dairy products or eat yogurt and cheese, you need that for your strong bones. And then I talk about just when we are choosing to snack, because I do see lots of kids snacking more, which, as we know, with that sedentary lifestyle and sitting more can lead to more weight gain, is making sure that we're choosing healthy snacks. So it's like avocado toast, or it's peanut butter toast, or it's banana and peanut butter, or it's yogurt with fruit, those sorts of things, not just grabbing a bag of chips or grabbing some Takis, like my boys love Takis. Or grabbing, some cookies off the shelf. It's got to be, so nutrition is first. Second, I always talk about, and water. I should probably add that too. We need to drink lots of water. Also, for me, a really important thing to do to take care of your body and help yourself stay healthy is to get good sleep. And I will say again, that's probably one of the benefits I am seeing with COVID, is that we don't necessarily have as many of our activities, which can be good and bad, because a lot of those activities involve like club sports or, being involved in certain activities after school. And now we don't necessarily have that. So what I'm seeing is that we can get to bed earlier and we can hopefully stay sleeping a little longer, because we don't necessarily have to get up as early. I think it's important to keep routine though. Your kids, especially your young ones, really thrive on routine. And so we want to make sure that we kind of do get them up for school. We brush our teeth, we still, maybe we pack our lunch the night before or that morning so it's all ready to go when it's time to eat your lunch. We kind of do our normal routine. So those are a couple things. Being active every day. So again, that goes back to kind of what we talked about with you have to turn off your screen. So a lot of kids are used to going to school, and then when they come home, they get their homework done, and then they're like, oh, great, my time to relax and kind of unwind is to binge watch a show, or the little kids are streaming, a quick show on Netflix. And so we're sitting on more screens, and we really need to try to cut that back. which I will tell you is a struggle, and the struggle is real because I deal with that with my own 2 teenagers at home every day. Because, it's important, it's challenging though, because especially again for your older kids, your tweens and your teens, this is the way they're socializing right now. They can't really socialize right in person, so they get on to their social media and they get on to their FaceTime with their friends or their girlfriends or boyfriends, and that's the way they talk to each other. And I understand that, but we don't need to be playing 2 hours of video games, or we don't need to be on binge watching a couple shows. Again, it's finding creative ways to be active. Like I talked about, I always joke with my families, I grew up in Arizona and I was outside even in the summertime when it was super hot. I know it can be challenging, but you can ride bikes. The other day, my son and my husband were outside shooting basketballs. You can go swimming if you have a pool. You can take a brisk walk, when it cools off a little bit in the evenings. Thankfully, that's happening a little bit more now. Turn on music, have a dance party. Another one that's super cheap and easy is you go to the dollar store and you buy a bag of balloons and you blow up the balloons, and the kids can hit them back and forth and they can play like tennis or like volleyball with it, and that gets them moving and active. So those are probably the biggest things I would say. And just kind of, checking for kid, we talked a little bit before about watching for signs of your kid being kind of anxious or sad or nervous. And just trying to check in with that. Sometimes that can present itself as their appetite's not the same, or they're having trouble with sleeping, or some of them are just worrying all the time and they're talking about their worries all the time, or the things that they enjoy that they used to like to do. Like I'm even telling kids, pull out your Legos again, do a science experiment, bake, help cook. These are other things that you can do, but if there's things that they usually like to do that they're no longer liking to do, that would be a concern that maybe your child is feeling a little bit down and might need to talk to somebody about that.
So the last question we have is around vaccines. What do you recommend for vaccines?
Great question. So obviously, I do know, and I want to throw out a little bit of a statistic right now about that, is that there are certain areas where there have been high levels of COVID, where we have found that kids are not going in between 40 to 60% of the normal to get their regular scheduled shots. And so definitely I would say we want to make sure that our kids are up to date on all their immunizations that they're going to need and are required for school. And that even means for those babies we talked about, having newborns, they can't get a lot of their shots until they're a little bit older. And so how do you protect newborns is that you protect them by having your immunizations in your family or your close circle that's helping take care of your infant. So like your school-age children, making sure they're up to date on all their vaccines. And that includes the flu shot, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But for the adults, that also would mean making sure you're up to date on your flu vaccine when it's available, which they are starting to be available now. And then making sure that you have your Tdap, which is your pertussis or whooping cough shot, because babies are more likely to get that from their parents and from caregivers who aren't fully immunized or they haven't had their booster. We need to get that every 10 years. Again, vaccines help prevent. I always say the risks of the vaccines are so small compared to the benefit. And we all have talked about herd immunity. People have heard about that. But the more people are vaccinated and we have protection, the more likely we are to protect everybody. So that would be not only your family, but when your kids go back to school, to protect your kids at school. And then with the flu shot, we are trying to predict how drastic this flu season will be. That's kind of challenging because I think everybody's not even really ready to think about flu, but we do need to because it's going to be coming sooner than we think. And the recommendation really is to provide flu shots for any child in that 6 months and older, because we already are saturating our healthcare system with a lot of COVID patients. And as you know, flu and COVID can look very similar from a symptom standpoint. And so the way we reduce, number one, flu is by getting your flu shot. But the other thing that it does is it actually will help hopefully reduce the stress on the healthcare system, and having more people end up in the urgent cares or the emergency rooms or even in clinics, needing to be seen. And so I know that certain offices, like we are offering our flu shots now, which seems early. But that's what the recommendation by the Center for Disease Control is when you can get them, you should try to get them early and be protected.
So we don't have any text questions, so we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. You guys, again, just take a deep breath. Everybody's kind of feeling the stress and the fear. Just try to remember that. I think the thing I try to tell everybody is I understand everybody's situation is different, but we all live in a country together. We need to take care of each other. So we do that by doing things to be socially responsible. So I'm a little nervous, I'll be honest. It's coming up on Labor Day weekend. And a lot of times we have a lot of spikes during these holidays because everybody's out enjoying themselves. I want to be social too. I miss my friends, I miss my family. But again, we need to make sure that we all take care of each other. So if you're gonna go out, wear a mask, make sure you're socially distanced, try not to be in large crowds. And then of course, as you know, wash your hands. And if you're not feeling well, stay home.